Good afternoon, guys. We're getting close to the end. My name is Dimitri Snowden, Global Enterprise and Analytics Guru, and this is Alex Steibler. Such a beautiful man you are, Alex. He's going to be here and go through our presentation regarding process intelligence onboarding. So Steve Jobs said it best, right? You have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology, not the other way around. But fortunately, in some companies, the smart guy always has a plan, right? And he's telling you to build a new onboarding process, use all the same legacy technologies that we have because I can't invest in it. By the way, I'm trimming your budget by 20% and I'm laying off 2 people. Oh, and I need it by yesterday. So then you're stuck trying to make it work, right? So how do you build a system that sits across any process that's agnostic to the systems of engagement and the systems of record? How do you make sure that it has a single source of truth for reporting? How do you get a cradle-to-grave perspective on that report, on that onboarding process? And again, how do you do it quickly? In the interim, your customers are very not happy with you, right? I've already entered my 72-digit account number. I already faxed that document in. I already emailed you my driver's license, right? It's the kind of the berating of the customer experience. How do we streamline that? And then on top of all that, your customer or your boss will say that there will be hell to pay if you don't get it right. So introducing analytics, and this is our process intelligence analytics. And this is an agnostic, elastic, and a responsive platform that sits across any technology and basically can tell you anything about that business process as it spans across multiple business units and or, again, different technologies. So just like any other analytics tool, we can count and measure anything over time. I can do multi-source aggregation, so on and so on. You can slice and dice on the fly. But if we zip down to the mortgage process view, I'll show you here this is the coup de grace. Again, being able to detect nuances in your process, wherever they are and wherever they're taking place, even if every step in that process is a different technology. Finally, a cradle-to-grave perspective on an artifact as it's being federated through your process. So if you look here, I'll just kind of narrate, right? So the top 3 boxes actually are different points of ingestion. So when you think about the onboarding process, a customer will start here and finish there. They'll start on their phone, and then they'll move to a web portal, or they'll start on the web portal and then fax something in. Well, how do you bind those into a contiguous artifact and know that all that equals a particular customer? So regardless of how that artifact comes into your process, you have a series of steps. And again, these steps could be anything. But for this demo, this is what it is. It's the mortgage process. So during that process, you want to understand how many mortgages or applications are at a step at the time when I pull up this process. I want to know how many applications are moving between 2 steps in my process, and the average time, the mean time, and so on. And quite frankly, I want to uncover what we call dark processes. I want to understand, well, if there's a deviation coming into a particular step or exiting a step, going to some other place in my process other than what I've declared, I want to be able to know about it. And again, this is not just a picture. Alex can click on any one of these exceptions, drill down into that node, and click down again and drill down into the lowest level of granularity, regardless of the data that artifact that data came from. And this is what you get. Low-level detail, the processor, who wrote it, how long it's been there, the loan application name, and again, it could be anything, right? I'll take you over here to the swim lane. So again, you have a perspective of your process, and now you want to understand, well, okay, what if we have skips or regressions, do-overs in our process? How do I get a better perspective on that? So you'll see here the first column represents goodness, everything is done correctly, but as you look further to the right, these are obscure variations of what I thought my perfect process was. Here we skip down, we regress, we had to skip back down again, and by the way, this happened 13 times or 2% of the time there, and 14 times and 2% of the time there. Though it's a low percentage, what if those were low percentages but high-value loans, balloon loans over 500K? And they were errant in this manner, right? And by the way, because this is not reporting, this is true analytics, I don't have to wait till the end of the week or the month to get this report. This is near real time, self-service. Come here, click this dashboard, and knock yourself out. So I'm going to take you into the back end, or rather Alex will, to show you exactly how we do it. I want to show you the magic sauce here. So Alex?
All right. So I'm going to get to the design studio in a second, but I just want to start with full disclosure. I'm not a developer. I'm not a DBA. I'm not a coder. I'm not a web designer.
What do you do?
That's a legitimate question one might ask. I'm just a regular guy with a business degree. That's what I am. I like to consider myself regular at least. But I was actually able to build the demo we just saw from the ground up. right? From the raw data all the way out to the UI, right? Now, I say that to say that this tool doesn't necessarily need to totally live in the IT realm, right? We can empower business users to be able to create their own dashboards, their own reports to their requirements and specifications, right? Alleviating the need to go back to a report writing team or IT to have these kind of requests fulfilled, okay? So, there's a way here we can empower the business, decentralize the work essentially, and really allow the users that are making the requirements to create these reports. So with that being said, let's hop into Design Studio and we'll take a look at where we can make this all happen. So what we see on screen is our guide. And so we've distilled the project creation all the way out to the publishing process into 6 steps, right? Six simple steps that you can follow to complete your project. Right, so we're going to start with adding a new data source, and Dimitri touched on being able to ingest data from multiple different data sources. Right, so for this scenario specifically, we've just released our onboarding app to the App Store. Right, now we want to be able to connect to that data source to be able to visualize that data as a part of our process intelligence view. Right, so we'll start with adding a new data source. So I'll click Add a new data source and name it. It's going to be our mobile data. Okay, and now this gives me the connection string for the data source. Now I just want to highlight the different database types that we natively can connect to here within the tool. Things like Access, Excel, DB2, of course, SQL, MySQL, and Oracle, QuickBase, Sybase, web services, basically anything that's ODBC compatible. And typically, natively, it's structured and relational. Now, we always get the question, what about unstructured data, but what about web data? And I've heard it multiple times just this morning. So, yeah, Dimitri, can talk to that for a second?
Yeah, definitely. So for all those other hard-to-reach data sources that we like to call them, we have another aspect of our platform called Kapow. And Kapow is a brilliant tool, and if you come up to our booth, we actually have some Kapow specialists that can speak more to it. But Kapow is very... It's awesome, right, with the name even within itself. But Kapow has this capability of being able to fetch data that typically you can't reach, that APIs don't exist, or that they're legacy, or that they're just a pain in the butt, or very laborious to connect to. Kapow can reach these third-party data sources, grab that data, push it inline in your business process to federate those artifacts downstream, and or even be part of a KYC process, for example.
Yeah, so no data source is off limits, really. We can get to any piece of data, any underlying data source for your technology. So while he was speaking, I just simply input the connection strings. You can see I've introspected my database. I have the tables that my user has access to within my SQL server, and then the actual fields that we're going to use here to bring this mobile app data in. So when in doubt, we go back to the guide. What's next? We need to create a new record. So what we're going to now do is build out a table or repository for this data within our analytics database. So I'm going to name this record. This is going to be our mobile app data. I click OK, and we're shown a mapping screen, where now I need to go through the series of adding a data source, right? Picking the data which I want to map over, coming from my mobile data source, and specifically my onboarding app table. And you can see here you can do all kinds of cool things with advanced joins, and I'll show that here in a second, how we can do some data transformation here within the tool as well. I click OK. I'm now shown all my possible fields over here on the left, and I simply choose by dragging and dropping what I'm interested in reporting on, what I want to include in my end dashboards. So I'm going to just drag over these fields.
100% codeless. So everything he's doing is being invoked by a visual exercise. Not one single line of code ever has to be written or be typed that humans can't understand in sentence form to make anything happen in our platform. Again, a regular guy like Alex can make it happen.
Just little old me. So just to show you some of the transformations that we can do, right? So we can do things like if then else, right? And we can even nest these. So you can really graphically, you can do just as complicated logic as you could writing script itself. And then we have some inherent functions to be able to transform the data, aggregations, conversions, date times, string functions. So this is really as powerful as just any coder would be, just kind of using a graphical form. So I'll hop out of here and just show you, I'll save this record. I've got all the fields that I'm interested in. And then I'm going to change this from on demand. So we have the ability to go calculate near real-time results. So when a user pops up that dashboard, it automatically goes back to the system of record and gives them a real-time calculation. right? And then we also have the ability to store using overwrite, which is the scenario I'm going to use, where we actually create a repository, a table in our analytics database, creating a buffer between the end user and the source system, which are usually overtaxed, and we don't necessarily want our end users being able to access the source data on demand. So we're going to create a table in our analytics database. We're going to refresh that data on a schedule, right? So we say hourly we want to update this data. We can do it hourly. We can do it every 10 minutes. We can do it every 2 minutes. So that's what I'm doing here by setting this to an overwrite logic and creating that buffer between the dashboard and the source systems. So once I save that, the next thing we would want to do, or we could do, is go to create a metric, right? So if I had some type of a calculation, an aggregation, a count, a sum, an average, a percent of total that I was looking and calculating, I could do that here. I could also do calculations around my process. How long is it taking between 2 different steps in a process? When we skip steps, what's the delta between how long it takes for users to process? But for this example, we're going to simply go into my actual process map and start implementing some data there. So let me open up my mortgage process. And we're going to notice, we already saw this, but we have some gaps here. So I need to add a new step, and this is going to be my mobile ingestion step. So I'll right-click and add. Again, totally a visual exercise. So mobile app is going to be what this is called. It kicks off the process. I want to make sure that it shows in the correct segment in my swim lane, so I'll add that. Now I simply go through this mapping exercise once more. You can see here it's just a couple of clicks. Mobile app data record. I start mapping the fields that I'm interested in.
And this is the magic, guys. Again, every step in your process, no business has a process that resides in a single technology. Not one business on the planet, right? It spans over multiple technologies. So if in one technology it's social security number, that's how they reference an artifact, and another one it's by customer ID, and by another one it's by case number. How do you understand that in terms of a process or state engine to give you that insight? Again, this is where that mapping and magic takes place.
And to that point, we're going to add another source, and it's going to be our Kapow source. So what this is going to be doing, this step, is going to bring us back appraisal and fraud information, the verifications that this has been done on the applicant, right? So this could, for instance, be a LexisNexis lookup, bringing back a FICO score, making sure we've gone through all the different iterations that we need to do to be compliant with this application in the mortgage industry. So let me bring this in, and we'll map to a totally different data source and a totally different record, which is going to be our order verifications. And then we'll go through that mapping process once more. So I'll quickly try to go through this for us. Category, officer, processor.
Look how fast this regular guy
can click his mouse.
He's
All
amazing.
Right. And then we simply map this visual exercise, and link it up. This is what comes next. I mean, we could have branching here. We can kick off sub-processes so that instead of drilling in, as you saw me do on the dashboard previously, we can have processes running in parallel and be able to monitor those as they happen as well, right? So we're not confined to just one single process or one single process instance. So it's really that simple, right? Now we've got our visual process. This is how we expect this process to go. And you can imagine that just adding all these steps would be more iterations of what you've seen. Pretty simple and straightforward. The next thing we'll want to do is load that data. So I'll quickly do that. We're gonna load the new record that I created, which was the mobile app, and we're gonna reload my process since I made some changes there. And this is the manual data load screen where we can specify specific time ranges from which we want to load the data. I'm going to take everything at this point. And of course, you don't necessarily want to come in here and be constantly manually loading the data. You can set these up to run on a schedule and run it on an execution plan. So I'll load this data up, and then while that's running, what we can start to do is build out those visualizations. And again, a totally visual exercise. So I'm going to create a new dashboard view. And this is going to be our mobile onboarding chart. All right. And so to go through some of the different components that we have available, this is essentially our chart library. So it's pretty exhaustive. Bar, pie, line, of course, stack bar, combination charts, pyramids, any kind of different visualization for the data that you're looking for, it's here. For this and then we also have things like grids, right? Metric grid, record grid, alerts, which we haven't necessarily touched on. But if you want to alert somebody within the tool, you can do it within the tool itself if it's maybe not as urgent. So when they come into their dashboard, they view what alerts have been fired. Or we can choose to send it out via email, right? A little bit more forward so that they're notified and there's accountability when, let's say, we're going to hit an SLA threshold, or we're coming up against a compliance risk, or if there's just a bottleneck happening in our process. We want to know about that, before the end of the week or before the end of the day, that on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we had an issue. So we can have those alerts set up to go out, and then if they aren't resolved, actually escalate them out to a different group of people. So really building that accountability and making sure our operations are as efficient as they can possibly be. All right, so for this example, we're going to want to just do a process chart. And again, just drag and drop. I drag the component, and I'm brought to another kind of guide or a wizard that's going to step me through setting up this component itself. So quite simply, all I need to do is set the time, and for this example, I'm taking all time. I click OK, and we've got our mortgage process chart.
And by the way, guys, this screen that you're seeing here, this, again, I mentioned that this was an elastic and responsive platform, so you build once and you can deploy many. It's mobile ready out of the box. This is all an HTML5 environment. If you have an HTML5 compatible device and you pull this up on your tablet, you would render it just as you're seeing now. No additional app store development, no coding, nothing to belabor yourself with. It's all right here.
Yep. And so you can see inline within the designer, I can come in here, preview what I've done. If I'm a business user and I just want to keep this, I'm selfish, I want to keep it for myself, I can leave it here. Then there's another set of steps we could take to actually publish this out to the user community, set up permissions, so on and so forth, so that users can only see their specific line of business per se. Right? And so that's as simple as creating that view that's there for us and available. And now next, I can do somewhat of the same exercise, really, and create a swim lane view. And it's really the same type of idea. It's all drag and drop, pull this out, and set the wizard accordingly.
And Alex, how is the swim lane component built? I mean, you didn't have to build anything for that, correct?
Absolutely not. So we build our expected process flow, and the data just falls in line, right? The process state engine understands this is supposed to happen before this, and there are certain exceptions that can't happen, right? And it builds it out accordingly. So, for instance, the red and the orange lines are here. But one other thing that we didn't actually show as a part of the dashboard demo is the ability to set a filter on a specific scenario. So we have specific filters that we can set, and specifically with financial, reopened is one that's really interesting because this is a good indicator of fraud. Right? We've closed out certain cases. Why are we going back and reopening these cases? But even more critical, especially in mortgage, is timing, because we have to get things done in a timely manner. So we can see processes that are open for more than a certain amount of time. What we like to call, is, I think Dimitri mentioned, orphan processes might be stuck in queue. If processes haven't had an action for a certain threshold or haven't reached a step, or if the transition between two steps is just taking too long, we can start to understand how efficiently these loans are moving through our process. And let's say, for example, we haven't reached the disclosure step in 3 days, and that is actually a breach of compliance, and that loan would be deemed void if that doesn't happen. So it's something that should never happen. And I can actually set this filter and see if it actually has happened in five instances in our process. We have 3 invalid loans sitting in the mobile app, believe it or not. And what we can do is we can click on these, start to understand, okay, here's the loan numbers. It looks like it's the same processor that's been doing this kind of trend information that's going to allow us to understand where these issues are happening and how we can go remediate those.
Absolutely. Brilliant, brilliant. So guys, this is process intelligence, and again, this is agnostic. So for this demo, we spoke to the mortgage process. This could be a employee onboarding process. It could be some other business process. It could be an AP process. It doesn't matter. This will always be in context to the environment that you're trying to monitor and oversee. So I thank you for your time. If you guys come to our booth in the next 5 minutes, we have not 1, but 2 free knife sets. Yeah, everyone needs a knife set, right?
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yeah, they let me come on a plane with those. But I appreciate you guys' time. We had a ball, and we hope to see you at our booth. Thank you so much.